I think I have remembered at least one time to wait a second before moving out of my chair. I was kind of proud of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Every other time I just laugh after I stand up and realize I did it. That's what you get. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Let's see. Okay, this doesn't sound half bad. A little. Am I hot? Maybe a hair.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's see what we're doing level-wise. Okay, the big thing is we never want to talk over the music.
Yes.
Other than that, so if you have something to say, then just tell me to stop her somehow.
Okay.
Flag me, I don't know. We'll nigger rig this. We'll go as we go. Steady as she goes, way of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, drinky. All right, boys and girls, I've invented this new idea that knowing how to solve problems is more important than knowing how to solve problems. And with me today is Ruprecht. I don't know why I pay this guy. What a fool. All right, well, Ruprecht's got a mix he did last night in his own little laptop operation. And, well, we were he was asking me about flaws in it. What did he not like? And what did he like? And what should we do to make it better? And I guess I naturally have, well, not naturally, but I have ears that, or whatever. But forget the ears. Let's figure out what tools we can use so he can do it himself. What do you think?
That's a good idea.
Okay. Now, I'm all jacked up on coffee and trying to go slow. It's making me like... Okay, so the first tool I want to look at here is Ozone 5's spectrography, or a spectrograph for you people who speak English. And here is Ian's mix. Which ain't half bad, actually. I kind of like it. I really love the bite in the guitars. There's a certain cool top-end thing. All right. And now we got, what's this band? Perigraphy?
Periphery.
Periphery. Let's listen to their thing now. Whoa, what's the first thing we hear?
It's not as bitey.
It's not near as bitey. It's way more smooth. And it's the kind of thing that if we heard this mix, like on some random stereo, we'd probably go, oh, hell yeah, that mix sounds good. Mm-hmm. And what's that say about our mix?
It's too bitey, probably.
Probably. I'm glad you said probably. Because we don't have to, Periphony doesn't have to be the god of all production, and their record may sound different. The next record may be just as bitey as what we have here and still sound awesome. We don't know, but so we always have to take all this stuff with a little bit of skepticism. But at the same time, it's a good clue. When in doubt, I say just mash the bastards and not overthink it. But anyway, so we already know, we don't even need meters to know that this is a lot bitier than this. Pretty cool. Okay, now the other thing that I would look at, using the spectrograph here, I'm not seeing anything that's a huge red flag. Sometimes the spectrograph is awesome, and sometimes it's not as helpful. It's usually most helpful with things that have a sustaining quality, or that would go by too quickly for a span type meter, a standard spectrum analyzer to work. So let's go ahead and ditch spectrography here and see if we find any other things. What I'm really curious about is the low end, and particularly like 200 hertz, like the low mid stuff. Periphery has all kinds of like growl in there, and you've definitely went more ja, which isn't really bad.
Coming to get you.
Coming to get you. Okay, and I've got this is Voxengo Span. It's a free VST and probably RTAS and everything else, audio units plug-in. And I got it in high-res mode. All right, we're going to check out Ruprecht's mix here. Okay, now what am I looking for? Well, right now it looks like a bunch of junk. And it always is that way when I first turn this thing on. And so what I like to do is just kind of stare at it for a while, to be honest, with it playing. And just to kind of look for patterns, look for anything that might be weird, look for peaky things. Look for a frequency response in the 35 to 40 hertz range too. Just kind of eyeball it. And it's not the kind of thing that I can get done in 10 seconds usually. I usually take about 30 seconds to a minute to really analyze this thing. You still there, Ruprecht?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm soaking it all in.
Drink it in. Okay, only things I'm really intrigued by. I'm really interested to see what's going to go on with the low end with Perry Fairy. I really love calling them that for some reason. I don't know how much people love them. But I also noticed we have this high end junk is way like kind of crossing this whatever this magic line is. It says minus 18. I don't even know what that means really. But rarely do we find that occurring in anytime I use this thing. So that's kind of a red flag I've noticed just from using this thing a lot. All right, let's go to Perry Fairy and see what they say. All right, forget the meters a second. The first thing I'm noticing was how clearly defined both the kick and the snare are.
Yes.
There's a doo pop, and it's not just defined like add 2K to get it. It's defined in a way that it's just more there, even in low mid range and things like that. So let's go back to Ruprecht mix. Yeah, your kick is almost not even there compared to theirs.
Yeah.
So that's a big red flag. And the snare you got is relying on room. It sounds like it's been squashed in a way that we're hearing less of it. So we probably want to approach compression in a way that makes the snare more there as opposed to less there.
All right.
And that's something I guess I need to make a tutorial on because it's a huge thing.
Yeah, I've really been struggling with that too. The kick as well.
Everybody pushes this concept of compression, and I love compression. But I always people say, well, I compressed the snare real hard, and that's how I got it to sound good. And that's not a bad thing at all. But how did you compress that snare? Because you can compress a snare 18,000 different ways. I find that most people are kind of afraid to get complicated. Like, did we emphasize attack or do we nuke the attack? And obviously, just by setting the attack settings, say at 0, well, you're going to nuke all the attack. Set it at 50 milliseconds or 100, you're going to let most of the attack through and enhance it even. So there's big differences in how that relates to the tooth bus, where you may have an SSL type compressor maybe. Oh, I guess I should put my coffee down because it's making...
Dinner time.
Yeah, tea time. Oh, you Brits are like that, I guess. It's cool. Or maybe not. Anyway, so what happens after the fact is a huge deal. And I guess we need to talk about that in a further video. I wish we had Ruprecht's video here. His mix we could tear into, but he did that in Logic.
Yeah, it's way more logical.
Nothing logical about Logic. All right. But anyway, so we definitely want more snare. Now, here's something I'm looking at, too. Look at Ruprecht's mix just visually. Look how loud he's gotten it in just terms of what it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Slamming.
Well, Perry Fairy actually has a little bit of space in there. They're not crushing it as hard. So let's take another clue here. It's possible that Ruprecht is just making his mix too damn loud, which my whole thing is I have to be in the game because I have clients. Clients demand a certain loudness, and they don't see any reason why their favorite cities aren't the same volume as their own. That makes sense to me. But since Ruprecht here really likes Perry Fairy, there's no reason he should be any louder than these, than his favorite band or one of his favorite bands. So, all right, let's see how Ruprecht's doing here, loudness-wise. Okay, so he's at -6 RMS, dBFS. Now let's look at Perry Fairy. And this was something he had bought from iTunes, this file, and we converted it to Wave, I guess, use iTunes?
Yeah, I used iTunes.
All right. Now let's see how loud this thing is. Man, those guitars sound good, don't they?
They do.
I really like the richness. Mm-hmm. I love stupid words like that. Not. Okay. Whoa, I said not. I haven't used that since Wayne's World days. Anyway, they're at -8. Now, this is a big freaking issue, is what does the listener expect? The guy who might buy this damn thing. That's how I approach this loudness business, when the clients don't override me. But I always try to get as loud as whatever's out there. Well, Perry Fairy, either something's weird or they just happen to mix it -8. What do you think about this, Ruprecht?
I think that I'm confused slightly. I don't know why it's at -8.
Well, I can tell you right now that if you look at it, I mean, it's maxed out. It's not that they mixed it as loud as you did, and then iTunes scooped this up. I'm almost positive that this is a how they mixed it.
Yeah, it was a decision they made, definitely.
Yes. So they probably said, well, screw loudness. We're just going to do this.
But, yeah.
And -8 is not soft. I mean, there's some squashing going on.
Yeah.
But that's like 1997 levels. So I guess they said, we're not going to participate in this loudness war, or we're going to back off at least.
But it's interesting because it still has that modern sound, though. I mean, it's 1997 levels or whatever, but
Yeah.
it still sounds devastating, like a modern metal mix.
So what do you think about your own levels? Do you just go ahead and match Perry Ferry and go -8, or do you go louder?
That's a good question. That's something I will definitely have to ponder.
For me, myself, I want to go get as low of level as I can get away with, as little as loudness.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the deal where I'm just doing loudness for the sake of loudness, and it just sounds like a big turd getting flinged at your face.
Right.
Which that's something I've been struggling with is, how do I condense a mix to a point where I can get it to those levels without it sounding like, a big turd fight or whatever.
And the thing for me is when I know I have to get up to -4 or -6 or whatever it is. This is all using the TT loudness meter, by the way. When I know I'm in that ballpark, it just takes skill. I just have to work to get wedge that in there. And a lot of that skill is kind of hard to teach. I'm working on a product for that now, but it's not something that's overly intuitive. And so if you can avoid that particular hassle, which that hurdle has nothing to do with the power of the music.
Yeah.
That's just some damn rule guideline we have to jump through, unfortunately. So if you could avoid it and just say, hey, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to even try. I'm just going to match Perry Ferry.
That does save me some trouble, I guess.
Yeah, and what do you gain by forcing it? I mean, I don't really think anything. Okay, so let's go back to, I kind of got off topic there. Now let's see what Perry Ferry's doing here in Span. Okay, when I'm using Span here, one of the things I'm really paying attention to, I'll start looking at what's going on around 30 and 40, and then kind of 60 and to 100, and I'm just kind of looking for trends. Like, where's the kick drum centered? Then I'm looking for where the snare is centered, and I guarantee you that Perry Ferry has way more 200 hertz in their snare than Ruprecht does. So let's look at the snare. All right, what I saw on the snare right there, and again, this isn't super intuitive. You got some stuff flying up around there about 180, which is usually a hair low.
Okay.
You can do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it usually doesn't cut through a mix well. But what I'm also seeing is closer to 800 and 600, which it can be pushing the boxy realm a little bit. Let's watch this again, and you'll see every time that the snare hits, just right, this meter thing will fly up in those regions. Pay attention to the snare. I think that a lot of your energy is being chewed up by 600 hertz on that snare.
Yeah.
And if you kind of pulled that back and got more around 200 focus, I think you'd also need some more top, most likely. Which is this Superior Drummer?
Yes.
Metal Foundry?
No, that's just the Avatar kit.
Okay. You're getting a lot of your snare sound from the Room, which is good because their Room sounds are amazing on those things. I love the Room. But it might be nice to get a little bit more of that close mic in there. And if you're emphasizing the attack a whole lot, before all your tuba stuff, I'm not hearing that now. And so you've effectively undone all that mega attack, which a lot of metal guys go for.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing. Did you go for a mega attack kind of sound?
Yes, I failed. I was not happy with that snare drum.
Did you check it with the two-bus junk off?
Yeah, it still, wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't as snappy, I guess, as what I would like.
Okay, and that's something we'd have to look at on the the mix level, because the two bus perspective we have here is probably a little bit screwy.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, most likely your snare is chewing up way too much level, and when it does pop, and then you're just gonna nuke it, shave it right off, as you can see by looking at your deal here. It's all been just whoosh.
Yeah.
Which is normal, not a big freaking deal, but you got to do specific compression methods, I guess, to get that to still work. Okay, let's see what else we got with Perry Ferry here. Okay, another thing to note is they're not using a whole lot of deep subwoofer on their kick drum. The Slate, all the Slate samples that I've seen, except for maybe like the Zeppelin ones, have quite a bit of energy in that 30 to 40 range. Now, let's see where your kick is in relation to theirs. And one way around some of this mess is use a bus compressor on your drums. See, that is often, it can be an incredibly powerful tool, and if done right, it'll sound awesome. If done wrong, you take all the impact out of the kick and the snare. But sometimes you like the tone, but you miss the impact. A lot of times I'll do is create an aux send or a subgroup, whatever, and then I'll route the kick and the snare to that subgroup and do nothing to them, no compression. And it's like a clean bus, I sometimes call it. And you just blend that in, because if the compressed thing makes it work worse, well, why not have an uncompressed version?
Gotcha.
It's kind of a backwards of parallel compression, where your default compressor or your default drums are compressed, and then when needed, you use uncompression to bring that up. Now, those uncompressed kicks and snares will slam your two bus again, so you gotta have to be ready to react to however that treats you. Okay, but yeah, I'd like to hear just more kick and snare on this thing for sure, at least in comparison to Perry Ferry here. All right, look at yours some more. And I'm curious too about the whole bite factor. Did you ever crank this mix really loud at any point when you're mixing it?
I've got it pretty loud a couple times.
Did it cut your head off?
Not really.
Okay. And that's fine too. Like, what I would do for sure with a mix like this, where maybe I'm pushing the bitey spectrum, is crank those monitors just a few times to see if it tears my head off. If my ears bleed, I screwed up.
And I intentionally made this bitey because I've always like fallen into the trap of having guitars that were too dark, you know, being a nice term, and the other side of that is muddy. So I've been trying to get away from that. I may have went, you know, just a hair too far with it.
See, that's awesome. I think when you start doing something wrong, you're always going muddy with muddy guitars. And then you take a day and you go, you know what? Screw. Ooh, nice noise. And I'm so good at those. Anyway, where you take a day and you go, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to make a bitey mix on purpose. I don't care if it's too bitey. You learn so much whenever you force yourself to, I don't know, dribble to the left side or call it whatever you want to, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big deal, and everybody should do that. And anything that you have a tendency to do the opposite and see what happens. So now you kind of have maybe you want to back off a little bit from where you were.
Yeah, and I was messing around with one of the Stillwell Audio free, like, Vibe EQ or something. I was just, you know, messing around. And I had that on the 2-bus, and I actually boosted quite a bit of upper mid-range. Not too much, but I mean just a little bit.
How much?
Well, it's one of those vintagey EQs.
Who knows then?
Yeah, I just kind of did it by ear. But so that kind of contributes to that quite a bit. Okay,
well, so maybe just taking that off might get you way closer to your goals right there.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up kind of liking it though, really. I mean, it's not something that I'm like, yeah, this is the best thing ever, but most of the time when I listen to mixes I've done, I'm just like, you know, not pleased really at all. And this one I felt decent about it at least.
And that's the thing we kind of brought up right off the bat was which one's right, Perry Ferry or yours?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely go for Periphery, but there's things about what I did that I do like. They've always got, their kicks are always just sounding awesome to me. It's been something I've really been going after, and I'm not getting it very well. So I need a little more work in that department, the kick and the snare department, definitely.
Well, let's kind of sum up what all we've learned here. Was one, I fired up Ozone 5 Advanced Spectrograph. I didn't really hear or see a huge difference, but just by listening right away, we knew that yours was way bitier than Periphery's. Now, we also realized that they're at -8, and they clearly have no apologies about it. And I've never heard anybody complain about them. No one goes on the forums and says, "Oh, damn you, Perry, and your unloudness."
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the consensus, I guess, with the younger metal guys is that, like, you know, they're the up-and-coming deal, and to me, it sounds awesome. I like the direction of the music and the production. A lot of metal bands for a long time had that scooped mid kind of sound, which I never really liked. Then when these guys came out with their debut album, I was instantly just like, holy shit, listen to those guitars.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, you can hear them for one thing, but they're still like heavy, you know, but they've got that nice mid-range, so.
Okay, so what we got here is, one, we don't have to go as bitey, although we can, just because we want to. That's option number one. Two is, we're much louder than our reference song, and we need to decide if we want to keep it that way or back off and say, okay, -8 is acceptable in metal now. Because it clearly is with Periphery, because I know people are buying that like crazy. And the other thing was the drums. Your kick and snare just aren't as there.
Yeah.
As present, as loud, call it whatever you want. I like using the word more there for some reason, because loudness kind of doesn't really cover it when you're squashing everything. But other than that, though, your mix feels pretty damn good to me. So it's cool being able to use these. Oh, and also, not just more there, but your kicks and snares, you had some 600 that could be just boxy junk chewing up level that you could have otherwise used for 200 hertz chunk or, you know, 5K crack or whatever.
Yeah, that's probably fighting other elements too. So.
But overall, good job, and it's cool that we can use these gadgets like this to tear them apart. All right, over and out.